What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the Gravity Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Chris. Thank you for choosing to tune in today. Hey, folks, we're continuing this conversation. How do we stay grounded in a world full of noise and chaos? And I don't know, what do you think? Are you experiencing a lot of noise and chaos? I'm experiencing noise and chaos in the news. I'm experiencing it here in my community, in my family at times, in my own head. Some of the negative self-thoughts, the things that really honestly don't help me at all, are noise and chaos. And how do I filter through that? I don't want to be listening to my own falsehoods. Some of the stuff like I'm a failure, I'm a bad dad, I'm a bad husband. Those were the thoughts that were really running through my mind this last summer, based on my screw-ups or based on my historic screw-ups. Some of it wasn't even something I'd done recently. I have these narratives that go through my mind, and they are not true. Maybe I have done bad as a dad or as a husband. Maybe I didn't follow through with the commitment that I said I would. That does not define me in my parenting or in my role as a spouse or my role in my profession. So that's what we're trying to do here. Bring on guests that are going to help you unpack your own life. Guests that are going to give you perspective based on their experience and what they've done to be grounded in their own life. And I'm hoping it's helping you identify those things. Here in a second, we're going to be talking to career firefighter Kenny Schroeder. Kenny and I connected on LinkedIn. I did a post about purpose. He engaged me and encouraged me, and I saw that he was spending a lot of time in the first responder wellness area as well. And so I reached out to him. He came on the podcast. Great conversation. Oh my gosh. He's like my doppelganger in a firefighter uniform, I think. We had a lot of crossover in our experience, both with things we've done and then also kind of the consequence on our lives because of it. But before that, folks, I want to talk about the hat I'm wearing today. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see it. Otherwise, I'm just going to describe it to you. It's a Warrior's Heart hat. And Warrior's Heart is a PTSD recovery center in San Antonio, Texas, and over in Virginia that's doing great work to heal our first responders and our veterans. I post about them a lot. I haven't been there. I've talked with one of their founders, Tom Spooner, a couple times. I've watched their documentary on Amazon, and I've talked to people that have gone there, and it is a remarkable place. If you haven't checked them out, I would encourage you to check them out. Look at the link down in the comments of this podcast episode. Go check them out, see what it's about, so that if you or someone you love is at a spot of struggling, it's one more place that you can refer people to. Warrior's Heart. With that, folks, let's get into this interview with Kenny Schroeder. Kenny Schroeder, welcome to the Gravity Podcast.
Hey, Chris, thanks for having me on here. It's a pleasure to be your guest today.
Hey, I'm excited for us to get to know each other a little bit more. We've been creeping on each other's LinkedIn. I know because I get the alerts when people look at my profile. So we know a little bit about each other, but I'm excited to learn more. For the listeners that don't know you, Kenny, if you could introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name's Kenny Schroeder. I currently reside in the small town of Independence, Kentucky. So it's a pretty large city, but as far as it's not a major city by any means. It used to be all farmland, and now it's kind of subdivisions and little shopping centers and that kind of thing. But born and raised here, this is where I spent the majority of my career as a firefighter paramedic, and really got into the health and wellness side of things my entire career of the fire service. So really just trying to bring all of that stuff to my department to make us a healthier department. Didn't know how much I needed that until I did need it. And so that's where a lot of my story, really hits home just on the personal side. But currently, I retired from Independence in 2022. Took about a 60-day vacation and got back into it, struggling with my purpose, got right back into it with the Fort Mitchell Fire Department, just a neighboring city department in Kentucky. So that's what I do now, as well as work with peer support and all things health and wellness for first responders.
Wow, brother, you and I have so many crossovers. Probably the newest one for me is that word purpose. So at some point, I want us to get to that point in the story because what, yeah, the transition that I'm in right now and the word purpose is definitely one that's been resonating with me. What got you into being a first responder? What got you into the fire service in the first place? Other than, of course, Barca Loungers and uh, I'm sorry, I gotta say at least one joke. I actually
It's fine. It's
I
fine.
love the firefighters in my community. We actually have a really great working relationship. I don't know how it is in your community between police and fire, but yeah. So, what got you into the fire service in the first place?
So my story's a little bit different. I think I didn't have any family members that were in the fire service. I don't know if I had any family members that were first responders either. And so my story starts my senior year in high school. We had to do a service project, and most of my friends were going out to like the food pantry or helping the homeless or picking up trash on the side of the road, something like that. Not to knock any of those because all those are important.
Yep.
But I wanted to do something different to kind of continue to give back to my community. So
Yeah.
I called up my local fire department. And I said, "Hey, can you teach me CPR?" And that was before CPR was really big.
Yeah.
And they were like, "Yeah, just come on up. We'll schedule a day. Come on in." And I'll tell you what, the moment I first put a step in that firehouse, it was like magic almost. I just felt this connection. And really it was that family connection, that feeling that you have when you just feel, something is right, kind of like the purpose thing that we talked about. But it was just like in the air, something there that just felt like home. And so they taught me how to do CPR. And I think the very first time I was up there, while we were going through it all, they got to run. And so I'm watching out the window, the fire trucks leaving and then coming back to, they're rolling up hose. And it was like, man, this is cool. Like,
Yeah.
how can I do this for real? And so after I turned 18, I got on as a volunteer. And just along the way, I spent a lot of time at the firehouse. Just, after I got out of school for college, I would go up there and run the rest of the shift with them. And again, just really that family feeling like you're connected to something bigger than you are. But didn't at that point in time didn't think that I'd have a career in it, right? So I was going to school for mechanical engineering.
Okay.
Ended up getting my degree in that, and I went to work for a company called Procter and Gamble.
Oh
So
yeah.
they're really big in like soaps and making people smell better and stuff like that. So I went to work there. I started as a co-op, and then they offered me a full-time job, and I loved it. Like it was awesome work because I'm a very hands-on kind of guy, like taking things apart, putting them together, and that's what I was doing there. Like we were designing some packages and we were testing them, making sure that everything was good. The thing that I didn't expect was I married. So back up a little bit. My wife and I met in EMT class, which was shortly after my first time in a firehouse. Like they're like, these are the steps you need to take to become a volunteer here. So went to EMT class. Met my wife there that I didn't know was going to be my wife at the time, but you know how that goes.
Yeah.
So we ended up getting married September 8th of 2001, and we're on our honeymoon during 9/11.
Hmm.
And just I know everybody remembers where they were on 9/11.
Yeah.
It's just etched in your brain now, and that was definitely the case for us. And it hit me very hard. Like it was very impactful because I have this skill set of being a firefighter EMT at the time, yet I was making my everyday of being a mechanical engineer and working in that field. And so I really reflected at that point in time, and um, may have struggled a little bit with my mental health too, looking back and understanding that piece of it. But I knew I needed to be in this career field, and that's what I wanted to do. That was my purpose. And so back then it was hard to get into this career full time. So I waited a year just until a spot was open and tested for it and got it. And it was at the same department, that I started my volunteer time at. So spent 20 years there full time. During that time, I went to become a paramedic, and so that was about 4 years into my career. Became a paramedic, which I never would have seen that coming. I didn't think I liked the sight of blood. Turns out it was my own side of blood that really got me going. Um, so did the paramedic thing, really helping people, really feeling like I was making a difference,
Yeah.
and also went through the promotional process and became a lieutenant. So I did that the last 5 years of my career, and just really growing and learning all along the way. And like I said, just being connected to health and wellness, knowing that I wanted my department to be healthier. And, I wanted the same thing for me, but really at the time I didn't know how much, again, I needed it. So
Yeah.
it, it, that's kind of how I got into it, and where my career went along the years. So
There are so many different places we could take this right now,
yeah,
Kenny.
yeah, absolutely.
There's the story of the girl, which is always a fun story, which we'll get into that in a little bit. My wife and I record Marriage Monday editions here on the podcast where she gets on with me. And sometimes we literally unpack conflict. Like we haven't even made up yet. Where we hit record and see where it goes. There's a lot of accountability in that, right? When you're recording it, now I need to actually be a good listener.
Yeah.
But before we get into that, you said something that just grabbed my attention that when you were in that season after 9/11,
Mhm.
and you were struggling with a little bit of purpose there,
Mhm.
and you said likely probably some mental health. So let's use Kenny's glasses that you have now with all of your training as peer support and the folks that you've helped.
Mhm.
What were the warning signs probably back then that the younger Kenny wasn't picking up on that you as a trained peer now, if you were coaching someone else, you would say, "Hey, wait a second, that's a warning sign. We want to get you some resources, some training to take care of this."
Yeah. So like I said, 9/11 was a big deal. And I just got married.
Yeah,
Both of those things right on top of each other was like, I don't know what to do with this right now. I'm just trying to figure out my way.
yeah,
And then after that, like after having that impact of 9/11, because I really hadn't had anything like that in my life so far. You know what I mean? Like none of those big issues that happened, those big tragedies. So it had me reflecting on what I was doing with my life. And we also found out maybe 2 weeks later, after coming back from our honeymoon, that it was probably longer than that, probably 2 months afterwards, that we were pregnant.
yeah.
And it was not,
Honeymoon worked. Honeymoon worked. All right.
yeah, exactly. So it was not, we did not plan that. It was unplanned. And don't tell my oldest child that although I'm sure he's heard it before, but
Yeah,
it was not a planned thing. And so again, all these different outside stressors that are going on in my life, and I didn't have the tools to be able to deal with them. I just didn't. I never took that as a priority. I was just getting by to survive before, if that makes sense, and just what I had learned through my childhood, it was just the way I was showing up as an adult. And so some of that stuff like isolating, I didn't really drink at the time, so I wasn't turning to anything like that. But just major depression was starting to set in.
yeah,
I didn't know what to do with it. I don't know where to go for help. I didn't have that toolbox yet. Wasn't big in the fire service yet as far as reaching out for help. And, I wouldn't have thought that I needed it at the time either. So, um, some things happened between my wife and I as far as some arguments and stuff like that, just some tension. So she suggested I go get help. And that's what I did at that time. Again, just for
wow,
depression. Just for depression. I went to see a psychiatrist. She put me on some medicines
yeah,
that helped during that moment. And I think, it's pretty common to where you get put on a medicine and it helps you get you through a season, or just help cover up those symptoms, I guess maybe is a better term. And
yeah.
that's what it did for me. As soon as I felt better, I was like, all right, I'm done with these. And I never addressed the underlying issue. It
Because
was
we
just,
talk about it in high school when we're sitting in the locker room. If you're, a sports dude, guys aren't sitting around saying, "Hey, I feel a little depressed."
mhm,
Guys, how do we train through this? I mean, I'm talking about how my knee's a little jacked up, and we're talking about how to train through that, right? How to, do some kind of stretching or weightlifting or going to a physical therapist. We talk about that. That's safe.
right.
But to say, hey, guys, I'm feeling down, and like I can't just pull myself out of this. I went for a run yesterday, and that didn't fix it.
Hmm.
What's up, right? I mean,
Right.
within our cultures, and I say that as in like big American culture, dude culture, or even just mainstream American culture. And then in our subset of first responder culture, it's not safe typically to say that stuff, or at least it hasn't been historically.
Right. Right. Yeah. This culture, like you said, being a man, you're supposed to be strong. Like you're the man of the house. You're supposed to just, protect your wife, your family, and that's it. You're not supposed to show any weakness. And then you put that the first responder world or in the military world, and that's on steroids. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like it's
100%.
you cannot show weakness at all. And
Yeah.
so it's just hard to make that first step of wanting to get help. And again, it wasn't by my choice that I got the help, really. It was after suggestion from others. And that
Deep
shows up
love.
again later in my life.
But it was your choice. That's the thing, brother. I'm telling you. So here recently, I was over consuming alcohol,
Mhm.
right? Like Friday, Saturday, Sunday. If I wasn't working, man, it was a 5, 10, 15 drink day or night or whatever. And my wife came to me and said, "Hey, babe, do you think you should back off on the alcohol a little bit?" And I said, "Do you want to be my wife or my mama?" Right now, eventually I
Mhm.
listened to her, but it took me another couple weeks before I had some clarity with that. And so that's what I love is that while you didn't necessarily know, and it's not the tough guy stuff to get help. And I actually don't like the word help. I like training, to get training on taking care of our brains and bodies.
Yeah.
I love that young, immature Kenny, who didn't know this stuff yet, had enough humility and enough courage when your wife said, "You should probably do something about this." You were like, "Yeah, I trust you. I'm going to do something about this." That's great,
Yeah.
brother.
Yeah, I can see that now. Again, looking back and saying, but it wasn't like I didn't make that first, I guess, reach out of like, yeah, I need the help. It was a suggestion from another.
Yeah.
So
Which
ultimately it
gets,
was my choice to go there. But again, I wish it would have been like, oh, I need help. Yeah, I gotta go do it, which is the case now. Like I can feel when I need the help. And it's,
yeah.
I just gotta pick up that phone and make that happen.
Which gets into the power of community. And I think for you and me in the season that we're in right now, and I'm actually starting to speak for you. So you tell me if I'm off base here.
Yeah.
I think it's the power of where we're at is we can look at some of our young troops in the fire service, in law enforcement, dispatch, corrections, military, and say, "Hey, here's the deal. I struggled. I've struggled. And
Mhm.
this is what I did. This is the training I went and got. These are
Right.
the tools I put in place to help my brain get through the season."
Mhm.
And it's not a measure of weakness. It's actually a measure of strength, right? We
Mhm.
can be that voice to where they go, "Oh, really?
Mhm.
You know what? I need to go talk to someone."
Yeah. Yeah, definitely leading by example. Obviously, when it comes to your health overall, is I think one of the biggest things you can do to set the example for everybody else. But the one thing that I always question when you're talking about new recruits, and I think it's, you definitely got to get in there and start talking early and often. But I wonder if it lands
Yeah.
only because maybe they haven't struggled yet and they don't know or they can't see the importance of it. Because, when I look back at my life, it's like, well, I hadn't really struggled yet until I did. And if somebody would have said when I was 16, hey, these resources are out there, I don't know if I would have, brought it in. I probably would have just threw it out the window and been like, yeah, I'm good. I don't need that.
And it's because we were good.
Yeah.
We're good until we're not. And even
Right.
if you're not good, if you're feeling good, and
Yeah.
even if there's this build up, you're feeling good. And so I was in the same boat. Like I without it sounding egotistical, I was winning.
Yeah.
I was winning at life. I was winning in the military with awards and promotions. I became a cop at the agency I wanted to. I was winning with awards, and I was winning until I wasn't.
No, you
So
weren't. Yeah. And me too there, and I think, along my career, yeah, I would say I was happy. Things happened. My wife and I would argue just like every other couple, but we never really worked on it, never really focused on it. I would have points in my life where I would just be down and depressed, but again, never really did anything about it. And it didn't come to a head until COVID happened, and my go-to numbing agent, if you would, at that time was just to work more. There's all these opportunities to work out there, so just continue to work, and then that way I don't have to work on anything at home. I can just stay at work and things are okay, and that just made things worse, and that's kind of what led me to the point in my career where I'm like, something's got to give.
yeah. So talk about that. This build up. I think that's very common for a lot of folks that get to a spot of needing to ask for help. What was that buildup like during COVID? I mean, I've talked with a lot of folks that was super tough
Yes.
season. So
Yeah.
what was that buildup like for you?
I would say, it was something new again. Like you've got this stress that I've never been through a pandemic before. I don't know what's going to happen, and everybody is in the same boat as you. So we're all stressing out, not knowing if we're going to get toilet paper again or, what's going to run out next. And everybody's in the same house, and it's like, gosh, I just wish you'd go back to school, and get back to what we were used to before. Not normal because we're still not back there. But it was just all of that stress, all of those emotions just kind of building up, piling up. My wife had just gone through surgery where she was working. So she's an MRI tech and she had a shoulder injury. And so we were debating if she was either going to get it or not going to get it because of COVID. Like you didn't want to be in a hospital if you didn't have to. So there was that stress. She ended up having surgery in the summer of 2022, and again, just another stress of how's it going to go recovery wise,
Yeah.
and so with her being off work, that gave me even more of an opportunity to work more.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
so that's what I was doing. Like I said, the shifts were just you could work every single day of the week if you wanted to, just because the demand that was out there. And that's pretty much what I did. And once you start to get into that mindset, it's easy to continue that mindset of, all right, works here. I think there were times where I didn't even ask my wife anymore. I didn't call and say, hey, every time shift available tomorrow, you want me to pick it up? I would just do it. And so when that happened, like it was just a very big gap in our relationship, the relationship with my wife, the relationship with my kids, the relationship with my extended family. It just created a big void there.
Yeah.
And, nobody was working on it. And it just got worse and worse until uh, we were like, all right, we're either going to go separate ways here because it was that bad. And I too was turning to some alcohol at that time and every other numbing agent out there of
Yeah.
like, what can I do to make this better, make me feel better to get through this? And it was like, all right, if we don't get divorced, like that was an option, but if that doesn't happen, what else can we try? And we did some counseling, and it just didn't pan out, didn't work out for us. We just weren't seeing the big picture. So we decided for me to go ahead and retire. That would get rid of all of this extra stress of working more shifts and things like that. And, just give me the freedom to then pick and choose whatever I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So after the COVID, which was we're talking 2020 to 2022, was this time frame. Okay, so not a very short time frame. It was a little bit extended.
Yeah.
Um, but in September of 2022 is when I retired. And if you would have asked me when I first started this career, and even 15 years into it, I would have said I'm going to stay until I can't do it anymore. Like
Yes.
physically, I loved it. It it again was my purpose, or so I thought.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what I did with it. I made it my purpose. And so when I retired and all of that connection was cut off, all of that purpose was not there anymore because I hadn't been working on my relationships. My family hated me, at least in my eyes.
Yeah.
I didn't have anything left. And it was just a very quick tornado of chaos that surrounded my life. I went from kind of having an idea of what every day was like, going to work, whatever, to not knowing what tomorrow was going to bring. And I struggled the most I ever have in my
Well,
entire
there's
life. And again, I just didn't see it. I didn't see it at all.
there's a reason why this sneaks up on us. Here's the deal: the job is awesome, and I've talked to some cops. They're like, "Oh no, no, I mean it's so horrible." Hey, here's the deal: I've been struggling with PTSD, and I had some pretty dark thoughts going through my mind. I still think it's the best career in the world. I'm specifically talking about policing for me, but I
Yes.
think the first responder career fields as a whole, I I have lots of great memories. Mixed in there are some calls that I wish I didn't have in my memory banks. But I'm just telling you, the brother and sisterhood of the people I served with, the the adrenaline, I don't know. Tell me about the hair being on fire. Obviously, I mean, there's two pieces there. There's the avoidance piece
Mhm.
where we bring in either substances or behaviors or overtime, right? I think that is
Right.
an avoidance thing for some of us. But
Yes.
there's also the adrenaline. Man, the
Mhm.
adrenaline and the cortisol and it feels amazing. So what was that like as a firefighter? What has that been like being a firefighter? Let's talk about the great times where this is the best job in the world.
Yeah, the great times are again that first step for me inside the firehouse. Like I just had that connection like I've never had before. Like this is something way bigger than I am, and I can actually do something to make a difference. Like I felt, like I was doing something every day to make a difference. And the people you meet like within the firehouse are some connections that you'll never forget,
Yes.
you'll never replace. Just the teamwork that's involved, not just during training and not just on the firehouse, and all of the jokes and everything, even between police and fire. The jokes and the banter, like you said, are just amazing. Um, but then also the runs, and I didn't have like there's not really a single run that haunts me. And I've worked through some of the little ones that I remember, and every once in a while they come back up. But um, I think that you can have those bad dark moments of some runs in there, but
Yeah.
then there's also those really cool teamwork things where you save a life, or
Yeah.
you put out a fire before it gets past that one room, that are just like, this is awesome. It's just like a victory in any high school football team, or baseball team, whatever, that big championship game. It's those type of feelings and moments that occur in this profession. And it's elevated, right? Because it's lives, it's property, it's so much bigger. And so I think that's what really gets me going, why I love it so much, just that whole service to others, really finding that calling. And like I said, I made that my purpose, but I think now, like before, purpose was being a firefighter, paramedic, lieutenant, whatever. Now it's like purpose is being of service to others. So I think it's obviously tied together. But I just didn't see it on that level before.
Yeah. You said something there a second ago that really resonated with me, and it was something like your family didn't like you, and then you paused and said, "At least in my eyes." And this is where I think a lot of us struggle, especially in these first responder career fields where we really beat ourselves up. We beat ourselves up because we realize, hey, I'm kind of neglecting the family by signing up for overtime, or I'm using alcohol to numb, or I'm using pornography to numb. I'm doing these things to distract myself from sitting in my own thoughts or for stepping into my relationships and having to work through the tough stuff. And I'm just again, my experience, I beat myself up. I'm a failure as a dad, I'm a failure as a husband. I'm not doing enough as a police officer.
Yeah.
And in reality, my family loves me.
Mhm.
They don't like some of my behaviors
Mhm.
and they wish I wasn't gone all the time or intoxicated all the time or fill in the blank, but they love me. And so the reality of grace that's present in these relationships and I don't know. I don't know. Tell me if what it's like for you in the fire service, especially within the peer support. That's one of the things I try to help officers when they raise their hand and say they need help. I try
Mhm.
to help them work through is, hey, let's acknowledge the behaviors that aren't healthy that you don't want to have anymore. And let's do stuff to try to replace those or get training or help to fix that. And you're gonna have to forgive yourself.
Mhm.
Because if you keep beating yourself up every single day, it's not helpful and it's not true either. What you're telling yourself is not true. I don't know. What have you seen in the fire service? Have you seen a similar response from firefighters, EMT, paramedics?
Yeah. So just personally for me, just to talk about the family side of things, the perception is from my own eyes going through those parts of my life is that they don't like me. I've done terrible things and they're never going to forgive me, and it's irreparable. And it just, when you're picking up shifts and you're missing out on things, that only further compounds it
Yeah.
and it creates this big ball of shame that is really tough to get rid of, and so I think it's important to understand that that's really not their particular perception at all. Like you said, there's things about me that maybe they don't like. But as I have heard many times before, and I like to use it today, you're playing with house money when you are talking about your family and especially your kids. Like all your kids ever want to do is love you as a parent. That is it. Like that's what they want to do. And so when you can look at it that way, when my 10-year-old is asking me to just play ball with her, like with the dogs, it's the thing she loves to do now, and I'm too busy doing whatever it is that isn't important, to be like, oh yeah, I'll play ball with you because I know you just want to spend time with me right now. Like it takes a half a second now or a second to realize that's all she wants to do. Whereas before I would just blow her off and be like, I can't do that now. Dad's too busy working on this,
Right.
and so it just takes that realization of all they want to do is love you. That's really all that they want. They just want your time.
Yes.
It's so important to be able to see that.
Yeah.
Then you can start to work on those relationships and heal those and let go of that shame because it doesn't serve you at all to carry that. Like guilt is one thing. Guilt can have you do things to correct, whatever the situation is. But when you're carrying all that shame, like, it just doesn't serve you.
The
So
difference
that's the
the
family
difference
piece.
the difference for me is I did bad,
Yep.
guilt,
Okay.
versus I am bad, shame. You know what I'm saying? I mean, those are very different thoughts for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Guilt, like I said, it allows you the opportunity to do something because it holds you accountable. There is something that happened that you did or you caused that created this bad situation where shame is just something you're holding over your head, for whatever happened years ago in your past that you can't do anything about now. Just for instance, if you felt like something was your fault as a child growing up, it had nothing to do with you, but yet you're carrying the shame about it, your entire life. And so that is the part that doesn't serve you. Again, if it's guilt, then yeah, there's probably some actions and behaviors you can correct and make things a little bit better.
So as this built up, Kenny, what did you and your wife do? I mean, you talked about the retirement. That was obviously a huge thing because you took out the one of the stimulants or one of the things that was creating some of the creating some of the stress and the trauma.
Yep. Yep.
What else did you guys do to heal yourselves, heal your family?
So that's still a work in progress. It's
Always, yes.
part of the work that I'm doing every day now. But one of the biggest things to help my wife and I kind of work together and heal was just bringing her to different resources that are out there. And I tried to do that towards the very end of my career, just not enough. I feel like, I just didn't do enough. And so just taking her to trainings, there's more of them out there now than there were ever before, and never existed before. But different things and events that are out there, particular to this area that I'm in, like in the greater Cincinnati area. The first thing we did was go to a program called The Bridge, which was in Ohio, and it brings first responders and their spouses together and provides some education, just a space, a weekend to be able to connect and hear, different talks. Maybe it's something you're struggling with, so you can connect there, but also give you tools and resources to help open up that communication. Because I don't know about you, but for my entire career, or 90% of it, I went with the knowledge of I need to not share this stuff with her. I'm not going to talk about the runs because if I'm not talking about the runs, then it's not going to have an impact on her, and therefore I'm protecting her that way. Let me tell you that is good at times, right? There's some you don't have to give all the details, but I think that they are much stronger than what we give them credit for. And they're able to handle a lot of those stories. And it really just opens up, again, the conversation, the communication to know, like, hey, this could be bothering them. It could be bothering me when I come home and talk about this. Maybe this is why I didn't sleep very well last night. Maybe I was up all night. So it really just opens up the door for communication and allows for a little bit of empathy for both because it's a two-way street.
Yeah.
She might have been home with the kids struggling all day too. So just acknowledging that both sides could be struggling. So that was key. I wish I would have again done that my entire career, but I didn't know what I didn't know.
Yeah.
And so just doing that. And then one of the biggest things that just helped us and really started my overall healing journey was I was at a conference in October of 2022, so shortly after I retired. Didn't know if I was going to be there at all to begin with, let alone take my wife, but I did. And there was a guy that I went with as well that I do a lot of this work with here in Northern Kentucky. And he basically, I like to tell him, he threw me under the bus to get help because there was a speaker there by the name of Jake Clark that runs, it's called Save a Warrior, is the program name out here in the Cincinnati area for first responders and military veterans. So he came as a speaker. He had some spots open in a cohort. So it's a 72-hour cohort retreat that they do there. And he was just making his speech of like, this is a program that's out there to help you. And hey, by the way, I've got 2 spots open next week. If any of you have the courage to say, hey, I need the help. And the whole time I'm thinking like, yeah, I need the help, but I wasn't going to raise my hand to say, yes, I needed the help. Luckily, my wife was there. My good friend was there, and he raised his hand and said, he asked a question about whatever Jake was talking about, but then Jake asked if he was going to be one of his people for the cohort. And he said, yeah, but only if I can take somebody with me. And then Jake said, well, is that person here? And then that's when, yeah, I got thrown under the bus. And he was like, yeah, he's right behind me. I'm like, thanks, Phil. Appreciate that. And, but again, deep down, I was so relieved, like so relieved that somebody could have the courage for me and say, yeah, he needs help. He's struggling. Please, get him the help that he needs. So after that, I went to Save a Warrior the next week. So I was in that cohort. Phil, he didn't have to go, or he didn't go because you can't know somebody when you're going there. But it was amazing. It honestly saved my life. It has changed my life, or at least given me the awareness of both, right? So a 72-hour program can't really change your life, but it gave me the awareness to know, hey, what I was doing before wasn't working. And now I have the awareness to do some things different, to show up different, and make my life work, or make parts of my life work at least.
Yeah.
So that's what happened, and that was in November of 2022, and I haven't stopped doing the work since, and I have no intention to do so. So
I love it. Well, brother, I went away to an inpatient PTSD center for 36 days,
okay,
and 36 days with 60 to 80-hour programming a week isn't enough to fix it. If it took 25 years of
mm-hmm.
military and police service to get me here, it's going to take a lot of years and consistent work every day,
Yep,
every week for me to heal my brain, right? It's a complex injury. Like you, mine wasn't a single event. It was that cumulative trauma with lots of events. So as I'm driving around my city, I'll have flashbacks, like just very unanticipated. Like I've driven past the same location a dozen times, and I've never had that memory flash up into my mind,
okay,
and and I do now, right? And thankfully, because I received training, and again, I like the word training because here's the deal: when you became a firefighter, did they train you how to intubate someone?
yes,
They didn't just give you the tools and say, figure it out. Are you
right,
serious? Right. And so
right,
you doing even a seminar for me, an hour talk, and you telling me about breath work, and you telling me about cold exposure or journaling or mental health professionals or medication, and then
mm-hmm.
saying, all right, go out there and do it, guys.
Mm-hmm.
That's the equivalent. We're giving someone the tools to intubate someone, but we're not actually showing them and training them
Right.
how to do it. We got to take it one more step further, I think, and we have to incorporate it into our culture of
Mm-hmm.
hey guys, gals, let's train on these skills that you guys have heard about, and let's make it part of our day. I really think you as the fire service, I think you guys have the opportunity to lead all first responders in this because you guys live together.
Right.
You live together. So hey guys and gals, let's spend the last 30 minutes of our shift and let's just do some combat yoga, or let's do some breath work together. Let's do Wim Hof breathing, and that's the way we're going to end our shift every single day, or at least our 8-hour shift. I don't know how you guys break it down. I think that's the way they do it here in my community. Is there's a certain amount of period where they are like on duty hours, and then after
Okay,
they can kind of do whatever they want until they get call outs or whatever.
got it. Yeah, similar. Yeah,
But
just the working hours of the day, and then once the Chiefs leave, usually is all right. Now we have time to do whatever we need to work on, or yeah.
yeah, workout, sleep,
Yep.
sleep. I throw that in quotations because in our municipality, our fire service has not grown a lot, and our city has just blown up
Oh wow.
in size. They've added a fire station, but I think they're a lot busier than they were a decade ago. So
Yeah, I would say the same for my community. It's just grown, and you try to keep up with that, but it's just hard. It's really hard to do because there's not enough of us out there. Really, is what we're finding here. Like there is just not enough of us, and so agencies are really looking and trying to get creative in that regard. But to talk a little bit more about the health side and the things that are out there, the resources that are out there, and the training and all of that. um, I really think it takes the leadership of the department, either the administrative leadership or the leaders just that are doing the work, the leadership by example, just to show that of like, hey, this does take a little courage to want to do some of these things because they may seem woo woo or voodoo or whatever you want to call them, but they really do work. And so when they see that, when they see either a captain or just somebody they've looked up to as a mentor for their entire career doing it and getting some benefit out of it, like that the buy-in starts there. So I think that's where a lot of this change can make, and like a lot of this change can happen. Like you said, for the fire service, it's particularly a better place to be able to do so because we are all together there. I'm sure it's tough in the police world because you're not together like we are, in the same cab of a fire truck. You're in separate cruisers, and when do you really have time to just one-on-one say, hey, I'm struggling, what are you doing, or has this ever affected you, or that type of thing. Where in the firehouse you can kind of see that. Now we have also had changes recently where dorm rooms being separated are now kind of the new thing. You have your own dorm room instead of sleeping in the same quarters. So in some areas we're getting better, some areas I think is taking away from that,
yeah,
and just giving your own space to kind of isolate, I think is what has happened. But overall, having that very big group family dynamic really helps us heal. And I think that the biggest place, you've probably heard this before, but the kitchen table,
yeah,
having that in the firehouse and being able to throw things out there, hopefully more for the good than for the bad, because that can also be a bad place of gossip.
yeah, yeah,
So you really have to kind of watch that, monitor that. But I think it's a great place to be able to have these conversations of, let's talk about the run we had last shift, and by being that courageous leader, you can start to open that with, we had this run. It's kind of not sitting well with me. It's hanging over my head a little bit.
yes.
This is how it's affecting me. I didn't sleep well the past 2 nights, and just by doing that, you're opening up the conversation. You're opening up the door for somebody else that may be struggling too, that isn't ready to talk about it, because they see
100%.
you as kind of the leader, doing it, and it just makes it a safe place to be able to do so.
I think that's going to be probably the most powerful right there. Because here's the deal: our chiefs can create training opportunities and can say it's okay to not be okay and all that kind of stuff. But I'll tell you what: if the guy standing and the gal standing to your right and left are
Mm-hmm.
going to shame you, make fun of you when you open up, it's not going to happen. So that's the way I've been trained to push leaders, both positional leaders like within the police service, corporals and sergeants, or just that senior cop that's been on the job for 30 years without stripes.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, exactly what you just said. That call yesterday bothered me.
Yep.
I didn't sleep well last night. Did anyone else have some problems with that one? That's the way we're going to truly make it okay to talk about this stuff. And it's in the darkness and in the shame where the demons come out. And
Mm-hmm.
it's in the light when we sit there and talk about it and normalize our reactions that I think healing really takes root.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I've had a couple of colleagues, here lately in the firehouse, just kind of blow me away with some things that they say. And the number one thing is, I didn't know others struggled with this,
Yeah.
and it's like, wow, just that little bit of the connection and the being able to just open up and be vulnerable with somebody, and then listen on the other side of that, it just is amazing. And it's so simple. It is so simple. Like, just, it's being a human, like, just talk about it, just share what's going on in your life, and then allowing others to see that and know that, hey, you're struggling. And again, just that whole conversation. But it's amazing when you see that light bulb go on. Like, I didn't know I was not alone. I didn't know there were others that had these same things, and that's really the power of peer support. That's why it is what it is, and why it can make a huge change. Definitely in the fire service, and I'm sure in the police line of work as well.
Yeah.
Just that having somebody else to lean on, to talk to maybe they're not going to solve your problems, obviously, but they'll help get you connected, and just walk the journey with you if that's what you want.
Yeah. Talk about this retreat you went on. What was the name of it again? And what was the structure like? Because obviously that served as this launch pad for you, this
Mhm.
start. So what was that experience like?
Yeah, so it's called Save a Warrior, and it's in just out in the middle of country, God's country, really.
Yes.
It really is sacred ground when you go out there. But it's in a tiny town called Hillsborough, Ohio, which is a suburb of Cincinnati. And it's a 72-hour program. And you're there. So they have male cohorts and female cohorts, but I was with the male cohort, and it was a cohort of 9. And that's usually the size that they do. Now they're doing double cohorts at the same time, just to get more people in at one time. And it's really all about, like I had mentioned, the awareness, but it's all about having a conversation. And it's all about a conversation that you never thought you were going to have.
Yeah.
It's things that you didn't think you were ever going to talk about because of all that shame and weight that they carried. So it was stuff that I thought I was going to take to my grave, really, to be honest. And again, it was that pure, connection, really, of being able to share that with others that also have similar stories, and the power of that, and knowing I'm not alone in this struggle, and it's okay. Like, it's okay to struggle, and then it's, hey, there's help out there. Like, you can lean on these people, and lean on now this bigger community, because there's over 2,000 in the Save a Warrior community that all just want the same thing for you, and that's just to heal, and get to a better place. So the whole 72 hours is all about that. Yeah, there's some educational programming involved, but it's all about just having that conversation and
Yep.
being open. And for me, like, I had never had that conversation before. And I never had those male mentors or figures in my life to be able to have those conversations with, because I was just afraid. I didn't think I could share that with them and be met with love on the other side. I thought I was going to be judged
Yeah.
and, held on a stake, just to be grilled, basically. And so to now have that, like, that has given me so much healing, and just catapulted me on this journey of where I am now, of leaning into it, and getting the support of others to work through this process with me. And it is work. Like, I'm not going to lie, it's hard work, and I know that because you're living the same journey. But it just gave me that awareness. Like, I think that is the key. I just didn't know it. I didn't realize it before. And so it gave me that awareness in 72 hours to be like, all right, I'm done. I'm done suffering. The first 40 something years of my life didn't work, and I'm done being in that life. I want something different. I want these parts of me to change, and to live a different life. And so that's what I continue to do with the work every day.
I love it. So you got back into the fire service. Are you full time again? And what's your role at this new station?
Yeah, so I really struggled, and I think that's why your LinkedIn post grabbed my attention like it did when we first connected, because I saw a lot of me too's in what you had to say, and just that whole purpose piece. So um being in the fire service, like, there's so many openings now in the fire world, and I'm sure the police world too. And so it was just an opportunity that was open. I still had that skill set of being a firefighter and a paramedic.
Yeah.
So I went back to work full time. I didn't know at the time I was going to do it, but that's what ended up happening. And it's full time, but I like to say it's part time because it's really half of what I was doing before. It's only one job. I don't have any more than that. It's for the firehouse, and they have a Kelly Day there as well. So I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's every Monday I get the day off.
Yeah.
So that is huge. Like we had a half a Kelly Day at Independence, and every time my Kelly Day came up, I worked it as overtime. So I never took advantage. So now it's like I get a nice 5 day stretch of being off that I really take advantage of. And it's just also being intentional with that time off, which I never did before either. So it's making sure I spend it with the people in my life I want to spend it with, doing the things that I want to do instead of doing the things that I thought I had to do, or just doing the things to get by.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
it's
powerful.
it's just it's a grunt position now. I'm just a firefighter paramedic, which I don't mind doing. It allows me to do the things that I do. So I feel like I'm a better paramedic now than I ever have been. And it's not because my skills, like my physical skills, have gotten better. Because as you know, with age, that goes kind of the opposite direction. Like your skills don't get better; they can sometimes get worse.
Yeah.
But I think it's just the awareness of just everybody's a human out there, and meeting them where they are and having empathy for whatever they're going through. Just allows me to sit with them and offer, stuff from my heart. Whereas before it was like, oh, this is that same guy that called 5 times last week. And, now it's like, all right, what can I do different? How can I show up different for that person to try to get them some help? That's the ultimate goal, but to make them feel not alone, and not suffering alone, because I think that's, where it really lands is when you're suffering all by yourself. You don't think you have anything else out there, so just having that empathy, it just really it lights me up. I really enjoy doing that. And then also with the position I'm in now, I just have more of an opportunity to stay connected to first responders and then continue to do the peer support, the health and wellness, all of that stuff too. It just gives me more time to be able to do that, where I can do it at work and then still have my days off to spend with my family, or however I choose to do so. So
Yeah. I love it. Hey, let's get into the story of the girl. You met the girl at EMT school. I'm just saying, like right now, I'm coming back to EMT school on day 2 because the girl's there.
yeah,
But did you not realize it at first? Did you say that?
I didn't realize it at first. So EMT class was 6 months long. It was part of a college course. So I think I was one of just maybe 2 or 3 guys in the class. The rest were females. So it was really, odds were in my favor, right? To find something like that, I guess, if you will. But we had scenarios where you would team up and get together and do things, and I never really, looked for that this entire EMT class. It was just like I was just had the mindset of let's get it done and let's do the work, and I want to be an EMT, and that was it. Well, at the very end of the class, I waited to the very end of the class, and when we were doing CPR together on a mannequin, not on each other, just to clarify, we my wife and I, Debbie, we paired up and we're doing this scenario together, and just really like there was a connection there that I had felt, and I'm sure if you asked her, she felt the same thing. uh but it was just that connection, and I didn't do anything about it at the time. Like that was the last class. Like after that class was over, and that was it. And this was in 1996, so before cell phones were a thing, if you can go back that far. And
Yeah.
so there wasn't the option to just say, hey, give me your number and I'll call you type of thing. So I went the very uncomplicated way of calling the instructor of the EMT class and saying, hey, can you help me out here? There's this girl from class that I liked and would just like to call her. And he's like, man, I'd love to help you out. I really would. But here's the story. Like, I have to call her first to get her permission to give you her number. I'm like, well, that's not awkward at all. Let's go for it. And so that's what happened. He had to call her, get her number, and do it that way. And the funny thing is, like, I got her number. I called her. She wasn't home. I left a message with her mom. Her mom thought that she had the number. She didn't yet. So she had to go through the whole same process of calling the instructor and saying, hey, can you give me his number, so we can connect. So we did go on a first date, and we went to see the movie Twister. was where we went, and it was a great date. And again, just that connection immediately of like, this is something I can get into. Like, I really enjoy this, and she just offers a spark that I didn't have in my life, and still to this day is that way. And then the second date, I did what seems like a great idea, and had her meet my entire family, because it was a wedding reception that we were going to. So I knew after she met my family that it was like, all right, this is somebody special, and definitely something that I want to continue to, just court, and all of that good stuff. And a couple years went by, and finally got up the nerve to ask her to marry me, and she said yes, and the rest is history. And like I said, like any normal couple, we have had our times of arguments and things that don't go so great, and
Yeah.
you're just kind of left scratching your head. But at the end of the day, I'm grateful, that she's here by my side, because if she wasn't, I don't know where I'd be. Just like having that faith. So
Yeah. My wife's made it very clear to me that sometimes she wants to hold me underwater until the bubbles stop. But she is a saint. I think
yeah,
any spouse that sticks with a first responder through a 20 plus year career, um, yeah, they deserve some recognition because it's not only hard on the first responder, it's hard on our families as
yeah,
well.
yeah.
The schedule is, but also the change that happens within us, and having our spouses that are willing to patiently wade through that process
Mhm.
and get to the point of us having the aha moment of I need to do something different. And that something different looks different for all of us. But wow. I
Yeah,
think
because they see the before the career, at least for some of us. I'm sure that's not the case for everybody.
right.
But for me, it was before the career, and then it's during the career, and
Yep.
noticing the changes that happen, and now it's after, step one of the career for me, and just enduring all of that, and not leaving. Bottom line, stick by me through better or worse, and there's been a lot of both, and I would never doubt her for a minute if she was like, all right, I'm done. Like, I just can't do this anymore. I get that. And so that's why I think it's just, all I have in my heart now is just love, and gratefulness of, thank you for being there, and being a part of this support, being a part of this bigger family that you helped create, and just knowing the impact of all of that. And, that's another conversation we can have, is just, the stuff that I know that I have caused some hard times in my family, and working through all of that. And now it's, I can't go back and change any of it. I just can't. And not having the shame carrying that with me. But what I do instead is just knowing, like, going forward, I can be an example of the healing journey that I've been on to show my kids.
Yes. Because
And so that's like the biggest impact I can have. And again, it's not like I struggle with this a lot now, is like this whole part of being a parent, and trying to have them have the best life, and guide them in the direction that I want to see them go, versus, all right, you just go out there, and experience the world, and do things the way that you want to do them. That's just I'm in a tough season of my life with that right now, but working through it. So
I am as well, Kenny. Parenting adults, I've learned is a challenge
yeah,
because I don't want them getting hurt.
yeah,
And here's the thing, though, and here's the beauty of your story, I think. And tell me if I overspeak here, but the fact that you have fallen down literally on your face and had to learn how to get back up is testament to you, for your kids of how to do it. So when your kids fall down, and they're gonna fall down, you're gonna be able to come alongside of them and say, "I'm sorry this happened. I love you.
mhm,
Can I show you how I got back up? Can I show you how I worked through the tough times?" And at least for my two adult daughters, they're in a spot to listen to me because they've seen me fall, they've seen me screw up, they've seen me work through it, and so they have some ears and they're ready to hear me not tell them how to do it, but at
yeah,
least tell them how I did it,
yeah,
and then support them as they figure it out to get back up.
yeah, yeah. The one thing that I've been trying to put into my life, and just how I parent, is use the phrase as a suggestion.
Yeah.
and just be like, all right, I'm not telling you how to do it, but as a suggestion, like these are things that work for me, and when I can do that, it kind of takes away my expectations too. Like, take what you want and leave the rest kind of thing. If you find value in it, then great. If you don't, then great. You're not going to hurt my feelings if you say no. But I just want to be there as somebody they can turn to when they need the help. Because, like you said, they're going to fall. They're going to have struggles, just like everybody does. And we just, as parents, don't want them to have those. It's just hard to let them go and be like, all right, you're just going to have to figure this out.
Yeah,
And we'll be here if you need us.
totally. Hey, Kenny, for people that this is the first time them hearing your voice, what are best ways for people to connect with you?
Yeah, so LinkedIn definitely is a great way to find me. So I'm on there. Our peer support team has a website, so it's www.kyfrpst.org. So you can find us there and make some connections that way. We try to stay busy updating things. We got a great symposium coming up in May of this year. If you're in the area and would like to get involved or just meet and connect that way as well, and definitely by email. Always reachable by that. So
I love it. Well, for the listeners, go ahead and look down in the show notes. All of those links will be down there. Kenny, time is my greatest commodity. I can't make more of this stuff, and you've given me an awful lot of yours. Thank you, brother.
thank you. It was a pleasure. Great to work with you. Great to meet you.
Have a great day.
You too.
Wow, folks, what did you think of Kenny's perspectives on life, on healing, on relationships? I really enjoyed that conversation with him, hearing just how this has unfolded for him to really get more curious with what's going on inside of him and how it's impacting the relationships around him. I loved where he talked about he's a better firefighter, EMT, paramedic now. Not because his skills are getting better in this advanced stage of us being 40, but because of the maturity that he has. And I think that's really where our senior first responders can help our junior folks out. It's not that we know everything and they know nothing, but we do have some perspective on the job. And I'm hoping we can take on these mentorship roles and really coach up the younger folks and help them just be in a better spot for a fuller, healthier career. Let's help them do it better than we did it. Folks, Jaimie and I want to hear from you. There's different ways you can communicate back to us. First and foremost, please follow us on whatever podcast platform you're consuming this on. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, and the algorithms tell me most of you are, you can rate and review us. Have you rated and reviewed us yet? If you haven't, please do. We'd really appreciate a 5-star rating if we've earned 5 stars. If we haven't earned 5 stars, keep your stars. Shoot me an email at chris@gravityct.com. Let us know how to make a better future Marriage Monday topics or guests for me to interview. Folks, we only get to live this life once. Let's go out and take care of the people in our tribes. Take care of each other. God bless.